State of Affairs welcomes our good friend Matt Hale, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science and Public Affairs at Seton University, and back here in the studio at NJTV, Max Pizarro, editor of InsiderNJ.com. This is a new site.
Yes, it is.
Which is all about what?
It's all about New Jersey politics, Steve.
Good to have you guys on the premiere edition of State of Affairs. You're actually in the other room listening to Ambassador Murphy, one of many candidates who will be running for governor, talking to us. Biggest takeaway for you from that discussion?
I think that Phil Murphy has the confidence of a front runner right now, Steve. He's in a very good spot, and so he is just in a very prime position to win the Democratic primary. He seems at ease with himself.
And on the substance of the issues that, as I said before during the break, that we really try to focus on the issues, what does it say in terms of where his focus is, Matt?
Well, I think Murphy's made his case right now is that he's focused on the middle class. He's focused on the people who seem to be struggling in New Jersey, and so he's going to do a lot of things that sort of appeal to those folks. That could mean things like he may try and raise taxes on the rich so they can help pay for more things for the middle class. I'm not sure he's quite ready to say that yet, but I think that might be where he's headed.
You know, because we try to be very issue-oriented, I'm curious about that. If we're trying to get a sense of where most voters are in terms of what they care about and how they'll make a decision about who will succeed Chris Christie as governor, taking over in 2018, but getting elected in November 2017. Max, let me ask you, top 3 issues.
I think public safety for many people. I think property taxes.
Define public safety.
Well, I think people want to be able to walk out their front door onto the street and not worry about violence. And I think we're living in very volatile times, certainly in many of our urban areas. Children going to school have grave worries. I think that that public safety issue in conjunction with property taxes for so many people, and the two issues are related in more ways than one. I think that certainly schools account for 60%, I think, of most people's property taxes, and our property taxes are exorbitant.
So the school, sorry for interrupting, Max.
Certainly.
This school funding issue is huge?
It's huge. It's huge. And the governor talked yesterday about trying to reform it over the next 100 days with the Democratic legislature. And Steve, you asked me for a third issue. I would say transportation in New Jersey. I think transportation, I do. I think it's a huge issue. I think people are spending more and more time in their cars. I think we have more cars than the roads can contain. And I think that New Jersey it's always been a transit state. It's always been a transportation state. And I think that we're in a very hard time there as well. I would name those 3 issues.
Matt, let me ask you, if in fact Max is right, how is it that elected officials, how is it that people who are running for governor talk about those issues in a compelling way to engage voters to say, that's it, that's where I want to go? How do you do that?
So, you know, I think those issues are certainly the ones that people care about. I think that the way you connect it to that, I'd also add education. I think that a lot of people in the state are really interested in making sure that we have a really great education system.
For their own kids.
For their own kids, right? They're less interested in other kids. They want to make sure
I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely. Everybody wants their own kid. But, you know, I think that the transportation issue, you connect by saying we got to get people to Philadelphia and we got to get people to New York, because that's a fundamental part of who we are in New Jersey, is we got to get people moving up and down the state.
But Matt, stay on that, because here's the contradiction that I see. We talk about the state of affairs of transportation. People say, I want to have a strong transportation system. I don't want to have all these potholes. I want to have bridges that work. I want to have things be safe. And we know what happened when people were asked about the gas tax. Will you spend a few more cents on a gas tax? They said, absolutely not. So isn't there a disconnect? Well, by the way, the gas tax to pay for all those things. What am I missing?
So I think the thing that people get frustrated at is they feel like we're giving all this money and we're not getting the best that we possibly can, right? We're already giving and we're not getting this fantastic.
So let's not trust, sorry for interrupting you, let's not trust any of the politicians, as Trump says. Let's drain the swamp. But then what would government do then?
Well, I think one of the things that any candidate in the next election has to focus on is that we have to make sure that New Jersey is the state that delivers the services that we all want. We deliver transportation, and so there's got to be sort of this accounting of where that money goes. There's got to be this transparency of where that money goes, and I think that's a really great way of connecting, particularly transportation, but also I think education directly to voters. This is where your money's going, this is how we're spending it, and we're doing a good job at that.
I say Trump, you say? Come on, Matt.
Sorry,
See, you didn't expect that one. I say Trump, you say.
I'd say that he's rather unconventional, Steve, in the way he's approaching his office.
Let's talk about Trump and his connection with the American voter, A, and B, his potential impact on the citizens of New Jersey, because that's what we're most concerned about.
Sure. I would say that certainly Trump, when he won last year, connected to a populist fervor. And as we examine this gubernatorial election in 2017, we're, first of all, recognizing that New Jersey is a machine state. So we have...
What do you mean?
We have party organizations that are primarily concerned with giving candidates the line to run statewide. And typically those candidates are in a prime position. For example, Phil Murphy has the line in most important Democratic counties, if not all. So we would believe that he, with that establishment support, can win. But what I would say, Steve, when you invoke Trump, is we have to consider what is now a very anti-establishment mood out there. And New Jersey is in a bubble in many ways because we are such an established entity as an East Coast. We're the enemy of many of these populist.
I thought we in the media were the enemy. I'm sorry.
Sorry, that's true. Yeah, I suppose that the two can conflate.
Okay, go back to the enemy issue.
Well, I would say that looking at this election and considering this election in light of Donald Trump and how he
You mean the
rose to
gubernatorial
power,
election?
Yeah, I think that we have to pay attention to that populist mood out there.
You
in the
think it's out
electorate.
there?
I think it is.
How could it? How do you? By the way, if Max is right, how could it potentially impact this gubernatorial race?
Well, see, I think that New Jersey doesn't follow that populist mood. I don't think. I think New Jersey is frustrated and angry at Chris Christie right now. I think they're frustrated and angry that he seems to have abandoned the state, and they want someone who's going to take care of New Jersey. But I don't get the sense that people in New Jersey are jumping on a Trump bandwagon, or candidates that are saying, I'm Trump light or I'm Trump like, are going to be particularly supported. I think people want someone who's going to really focus on New Jersey, but not with the sort of rhetoric that Trump does.
Real quick, on this thing about Chris Christie at the end of his term, is it fair to say that most governors at the end of a second term, it is very hard to maintain a level of popularity?
Absolutely. Certainly.
And so therefore, for Chris Christie, if you were to say what his legacy has been, how would you describe it?
I think, Steve, that he had a very, very fine first term. I think that his legacy is as a first-term governor, he was extremely successful. His second term appeared to be mired in scandal and his own ambitions for the presidency, and it got away from him.
Yeah, I'd certainly say that Chris Christie had, one of the best first-term governors in a long time in any state. I think it was a complete disaster in the second term, and I think he's gone nowhere.
But let me just say this: as we're doing this program in March 2017, opportunity to make a difference in the final months of this administration.
Well, I think one of the things we saw in the budget speech last night is Chris Christie sort of going back to the first term and saying, I want to reach across the aisle, particularly on school funding. He said, I'm going to go and, we have 100 days. We're going to try and make this happen. But he recognized that it had to be partisan, it had to be bipartisan.
But that's a real issue, and it's got to be resolved, and the Democrats have a responsibility, do they not, Max?
Sure.
They can't just say, wait a minute, it's your problem because you're the governor.
Right. That's true, Steve. But what's interesting
Or we'll wait
here
for the
is-
next governor.
Right. I think that we have a Democratic Party establishment, and I think I heard Phil Murphy say this today even.
In our interview here.
Right. That they don't want to reform the school funding formula. They don't want to change
But doesn't
the
it
school
need?
funding.
Does it need to? Sorry for interrupting, Max.
Certainly.
Max, doesn't it need to be reformed because there's so many communities that are getting underfunded, and therefore suburban communities,
Right.
and their property taxes are too high. That doesn't mean that urban communities that were in the Abbott School situation in terms of the courts and what they said, I don't want to get into a long-winded thing, that we have to protect them, but these other communities are suffering, no?
Steve, I heard Speaker Prado yesterday say that he wants it tweaked. He doesn't want it overhauled. Christie wants it overhauled.
Well,
And
those are words.
that's the-
What tweaked, overhauled, some changes need to be made or no?
Sure, changes need to be made, absolutely. But it's a matter
I'm going to let you finish.
It's a matter of how far you're going to go. Christie wants to overhaul the system. He wants a per-pupil spending formula. Democrats don't want that. They want their power bases protected in those urban areas.
Respectfully, that's about their power bases. The question is, what is best for most citizens of the state? Go ahead.
So one of the things that Christie was, one of the reasons why I think a lot of people at first look liked the Christine formula, the fairness formula, is that
Funding formula.
The funding formula is that it sort of gave everybody the exact same amount of money, and that seems to a lot of people who are paying too much in property taxes.
But it's more complex than that because some districts need more than others.
Absolutely, it's far more complex than that. But from a political standpoint, that can be helpful. I think the fact that he's willing to work with folks, or says he's willing to work for folks, might get something done.
Because we still have problems that have to be dealt with.
Absolutely.
Listen, guys, I want to thank you for joining us on our premiere edition of State of Affairs. Come back again.
Thanks.
You're a good
Absolutely.
team. That is it for this premiere edition of State of Affairs. Let's continue the conversation. So follow me on Twitter at Steve Adubato. See you next week on State of Affairs. Thank you, guys. This is good.
State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence. State of Affairs with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Agnes Veris NJTV studio at 2 Gateway. Funding has been provided by RWJ Barnabas Health, the New Jersey Education Association, New Jersey Resources, the law firm of Gibbons PC, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, NJM, International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 825, the Northeast Regional Council of Carpenters, and by these public-spirited organizations, individuals, and associations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey.